Welcome to Small Arms Solutions. Today's video was actually called Who the Hell is Chris Bartocci? What that is I want to let some of my viewers know who actually have no idea who I am, my background, my experience, what brings me where I'm at today. But first I want to discuss a little unpleasantness. About 3 weeks ago, I had a rather unfortunate incident trying to cut a limb down from a tree that was about 15 feet in the air. Instead of the log dropping like it was supposed to, it actually spun, knocked me off a ladder, fell about 12-15 feet, and broke my back. So I spent about 17 or so days in the hospital and in rehab. Got out about a week ago, and I'm starting to try to get back into my routine here. I want to do some more videos. You have had some consistency in videos over the last 3 weeks. The reason for that was 3 weeks ago I was supposed to be out of the country for a month. I was supposed to be in the Ukraine as well as out at Fort Benning, but unfortunately that was swapped by being in the hospital. So that's why you've had consistent videos for the last 3 weeks, but going forth you may see a little less videos, but you will definitely see me in the brace. The videos that we're going to be doing for the next several weeks are going to be ones where it's not going to involve any range shooting until my doctor clears me to actually shoot. But we have several upcoming videos which don't require that, which are more of a historic videos. For instance, I have coming up one on the new M855A1 ammunition. I have one coming up. It's going to be a series on the M4 carbine. I have one's going to be going on the AR-15A4 or the M16A4 commercial variations, which will include the Colt AR-15A4, the FN Special Edition or Military Collector's rifle, as well as the Aero Precision. And I have a couple other custom built ARs which have a lot of really interesting components from several manufacturers. So we're going to continue bringing you videos, but the shooting is going to be out until I get cleared. I figure about 3 weeks. I'm hoping to get cleared in the beginning of December to get back to work. There's a lot of really neat stuff to look forward to. I have stuff coming. I have several weapons coming in from Hk pistols, rifles. From Glenn Fleming out of the Acadiana Gun Works, I've got some full auto Scar heavy, Scar light, FAL. We're also going to have a special treat probably in late December. Judd Foster from Foster is going to be flying here to Houston to do a demonstration with his Origin 12 shotgun. It's going to be pretty awesome having him here to do it. He's going to bring some of his specialized guns, his short barrels, press shotguns. That's going to be really cool to have him come out to do that. We're going to have a couple visits to some manufacturers here. We have one Battle Rifle Company is right out here in Houston. There's another company, F1, which is actually right here in Spring where I'm at. So we have a lot of really interesting things coming forward. We're also going to be having one coming up. Actually, it'll be probably done next week. It's going to be on the history of the Hk Usp Pistol. I have USP 9, 40, 45, and 45 Tactical that has already shipped to me from Hk. I'm looking forward to doing that. So we have a lot of interesting stuff coming up. It's going to be slightly modified until I heal up and get out of this brace. Going into my background, it starts way back probably when I was 9 or 10 years old. This is what I've done my entire life. I never switched from hobby to hobby. This has been my true love forever. It sort of started, my family background is my grandfather, my paternal grandfather, or maternal grandfather. He was actually killed in World War II, Villa-Val, September 1944. My step-grandfather was a career soldier. He served combat tours in World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. And he was very much into firearms. My father was into firearms as well. However, me and my father developed very different tastes in firearms. My dad was more of appreciative of a nice, beautiful, 6-inch nickel Colt Python, where I looked at the M16s or the AR-15s in the same way he looked at that Python. So probably around 8, 9 years old, I became interested, and then everything was pretty much altered about the time I turned 10. This rifle here, I have a couple rifles here that I'm going to show you that are most near and dear to my collection. To many of you, just look at this and say, hey, this is just a regular Colt SP1. Well, this particular rifle altered the course of my life forever. One of my neighbors, when I was probably 10 years old or so, I had a newspaper out, told me that the guy across the street had a machine gun. So I happened to be one of my customers for the newspaper, so I went across the street and And this guy, well, he was probably in his early 20s. I was probably about 10, 11 years old. He goes, I don't have a machine gun, but I got an AR. And when he told me that, my eyes just bulged and my mouth dropped because I never actually had seen a real one. And he brought it, let me take a look at it, and it was this rifle. And probably about 6 weeks or 8 weeks later, myself, my buddy there, and my father went to the range. And this was the first AR-15 I shot. After I pulled the trigger for the first time, I was completely hooked. It was the greatest thing that I ever did. All I wanted to do was learn about the history of this rifle. Now, this particular rifle, I had been trying to get from my friend for well over 20 years. And right before I left New York, since Chancellor Cuomo decided to make all these guns illegal, he finally sold it to me. So that's why this rifle is so special. Was this was the first one that I ever shot, and this basically put my life on its path to where I'm at today. So from there, I worked as a kid, back in the days when we had paper routes and we cut grass, and I worked my little butt off to save up the $590 to buy my first AR-15. I bought this when I was 15 years old. It was $590. This particular rifle is an AR-15A2 Sporter 2. I got it in 1989, and yeah, I really worked hard for this rifle. And this was my most prized possession. I was also very fortunate in the fact that my parents, they were around guns their whole lives and everything, so they weren't freaked out by the fact that, me at 8, 9, 10, 11, 15 years old, this was what I did. And my parents were very supportive of this as a hobby. I don't think they ever thought I would take it as far as I did, but they were always extremely supportive. This is my first one. So I spent pretty much all my time between ages of 15 and 18. It ranges. One of my customers in my paper route, he taught me how to reload. So I learned how to reload back then when I was very, very young. I made most of my own ammunition for these rifles while I was in high school. So I got a really good education on ammunition and ballistics just growing up and reloading. 17, I was a junior in high school. I joined the Army. I was in active reserves when I joined that was for an entire year. And then I went active duty the day after I graduated from high school. My military career was cut very short due to severe foot problems, which would be later identified as psoriatic arthritis. I had tried to go back to the Army 3 different times. 2 times, was going re-enlisting, and once as an officer. And every time I would go to MEPS, they would find an additional issue, whether it was the foot problems or later it became a skin issue. So they basically told me after the 3rd time to stop wasting their time, so I did. I then went to school for police science. While I was doing my associate's degree, I went to work for a professional gun shop where I had gotten a lot of education on firearms. And from there is where it got a little bit more interesting. I was hired by a gentleman named William Hood Walter. He was at the time the president of LaserMax, which I'm sure many of you have heard of LaserMax. They make the internal laser handgun sights. LaserMax was a brand new company at the time. They had just come out with their spring guide laser. However, they had no data or any information on the longevity of it. They were selling the laser sight without knowing the durability, how it would hold up if it failed, how it would affect a pistol. So I was hired at first to do testing because every laser that they manufactured had to have 5 rounds put through it. But we had set up, I was responsible for setting up a test evaluation and a durability criteria. So I had the opportunity to fire several 10, 15, 20,000 round tests on multiple pistols, Glock, Sig, Beretta, as well as the lasers. That was also my introduction to the industry, where I had started to meet people from different companies and making contacts. From there, during the company reorganization, I was laid off. I went back to school to get my bachelor's degree in police science, and I attended a little seminar, and a friend of mine recommended that I go to the local crime lab to take a look. With my firearms background, there was a chance that I might be able to fit in forensics. So I went to the Monroe County Crime Laboratory, and from there did a little internship with the Forensic Firearms and Toolmark section. I actually almost got a job there, but the guy who ended up getting the job was already qualified, and he was coming up from Florida. So, I lost out on that job. However, I put a lot of resumes out, and I was hired by the Wisconsin Department of Justice State Crime Laboratory in Milwaukee. I was hired as a trainee firearms examiner, which there I completed my training, and I served as a firearms examiner there for 5 years. During that time, I did a lot of special research and training on many different aspects of firearms, including armor-piercing ammunition, bulletproof vests, sound suppressors, all kinds of testing on that. I can't even think of how many cases that I was responsible for there. We did thousands of cases, everything from homicides, assaults, pretty much anything that had to do with the firearm, serial number restorations, distance determination, shot patterning, ejection patterning, as well as working with medical examiners. I can definitely tell you I've seen more wounds and more gunshot wounds than I care to say, a lot of dead bodies. So I have a rather unique perspective on what happens when bullets hit bodies and terminal performance of ammunition. From there, I went back home to Rochester, New York. Worked for the Monroe County Crime Laboratory doing the same work. During the same time, my wife had encouraged me to write a book. The original book, Black Rifle, was my bedtime story, since 1985 when the book came out. That was just my favorite book, learning about it. The book really took place from the early 1950s right up through 1985. So I had gone on a journey to write Black Rifle 2. Black Rifle 2 carried the story from 1985 to 2004. Which included detailed descriptions of the M16A2, the M4, the ACR program, 9mm submachine gun, Canadian rifles, as well as parts variations. The book was published in 2004 and is sold pretty well. It's a very subject-specific book. It's sold well over 10,000 copies. It's in its fourth printing as I speak. I never thought the book would catch on as well as it did. It was a very it was definitely a labor of love, just because the research was tedious. I had become friends with many of the industry people, many of the presidents of companies, Mark Westrom, Carl Lewis, Dave Dunlap, Dick Swan, as well as I got to spend time with engineers at Colt. Now, when I say engineers at Colt, I'm referring to the engineers from the 80s and 90s and very early 2000s. The company is very different now than it was back then. The engineers back in those days were some of the absolute finest in the industry. They were industry leaders. They were leaders in small arms technology. We're talking about the Mac McCones and Mike LaPlante and Harold Waterman's, people who were truly the guys who I just thought the absolute world of. And I got to spend time with those guys and interview them, and a lot of those guys, my book documented their careers. So now we're going to fast forward to 2008. My dream since I was a child, all I ever wanted to do was to work for Colt. And I had sort of gotten lucky with the fact that I wrote the book. The book ended up really being a testament to Colt. Well, around doing about 10 years in forensics between the two laboratories, I had the opportunity to meet with General Keys at Colt in Hartford. And I just came out and told him, "Sir, I want to work for you." And General Keys offered me my dream job. It was what I had dreamed of my entire life. I left forensics and never looked back. Looking back at it now, I don't miss it. In those 10 years, I testified nearly 200 times in court. I probably worked over 8,000 cases. Stress of going to court, dealing with homicides. Some people really were good at this. They enjoyed it. They got off on it. Myself, it just that wasn't where my true passion was. It wasn't where my heart was. I want to work with soldiers and police. During that time, I worked for the crime laboratory in Milwaukee as well as Milwaukee and Rochester. I maintained weapons for SWAT teams, both in both states. Mostly my work was done in Rochester. I maintained weapons for the Monroe County Sheriffs. I maintained weapons for the Rochester Police Department, as well as most of the surrounding communities, the local towns. I'd done that for free. In fact, my neighbors across the street probably thought I was a drug dealer, because I used to have police cars and Humvees and SWAT vans pull up to my driveway all hours of the day and night, and guys coming out with M4s in their hands. I had a machine shop, but I had everything right in my basement where I was able to maintain. I kept spare parts, so whenever they had a weapon that went down, I would take care of it for them. But in April of 2008, I just took up a position as a technical specialist at Colt Defense. Oddly enough, I never left New York. One thing I realized very quickly on at Colt was that wasn't the company that I fell in love with as a child. It was very different. It was very unstable. They go through people like nobody else in the industry. They always swap out, swapping out people. So I pretty much knew that it wouldn't last forever. So something in my gut told me not to move to Hartford. So I love that job so much that I left my house at 1 o'clock on Monday morning. Drove 8-10 hours, whatever it was, to get into Hartford. Worked 4 10-hour days, and I stayed in a hotel you paid by the hour for 3 nights a week. I came home on Thursday afternoon. Got home around Thursday night, and I did that for 3 years. During that time at Colt, I did all kinds of different things. I rewrote their entire armors program, their manuals, PowerPoints. I was sort of a company historian as well. If somebody had technical issues that customer service couldn't deal with, I did. I did a lot of international armor operator training and trade shows all over the world. That's where my traveling first began. I spent a couple weeks in Chile working with the Chilean army on their adoption of the carbines, as well as the M203 grenade launchers. Greece, Jordan, India, Turkey, just a few to say the least of places I had went with Colt. And that lasted until 2010. As soon as General Keys was gone, I got laid off. They said they were doing reorganization again. I always knew Colt was not stable. So from there, I was hired by Otis Technology. Now, I had been doing consulting work for Otis Technology several months prior to me being laid off at Colt. I was assisting them with product development and a lot of education on how to clean weapons. So I was hired in their Phoenix office in their R&D, where I did a lot of R&D work. Several of the components that you see in Otis Technology now were stuff that I had designed. The AK kits were my design. I did a lot of work on the bone tool. Myself and Chris Ashley were the ones who designed that. And I also had spearheaded a lot of Otis Technology's international sales. I had done multiple trade shows and training throughout the world for Otis Technology. All in all, between the two companies, I've been over 26 different countries doing training. So I had done that with Otis Technology for a few years, and then after the military contracts dried up, Otis was forced to do a lot of laying off. I was one of them. However, the same moment that they laid me off, they offered me a contract to work with them as a contractor. And I have worked with Otis Technology ever since. Probably of any of the companies I've ever worked for, I've had the best relationship with them and have been treated the best by them. So to this day, I still do work for them. Probably around 2010, 2011 is when we decided, myself and my wife decided that, I work for a lot of companies in the defense industry who, as time went on, they kept losing people because of the war. The money was drying up and whatnot. So rather than depend on one company for income coming in, we decided to open up our own company, Small Arm Solutions, where I would be able to work with many companies. So as we started that, I had begun working with many companies. I have done various types of consulting, including armors manuals, operators manuals, international training, industry research, product testing for companies such as Armalite, Lewis Machine and Tool, Core 15, LWRCI, American Tactical, Wyndham Weaponry, just to name a few. That I've done a lot of work for in various capacities. Also, a big part of my existence has been a writer. I have written for about 10 years now. I started with a couple articles in Gun Digest. From there, I was picked up by Small Arms Review, Small Arms Defense Journal. I had written for them for 10 years. I had more than 200 publications in print, and still some that are in press. That relation was terminated a couple months ago. One of the things that I was forced to look at was the fact that the written magazines or the written journals had seemed to be on their way out because of the internet. If you look at the closing of Paris publications, you go into any place where they sell gun publications, you notice that there's hardly any gun publications anymore after they closed down. And over the last couple of years, Small Arms Review, Small Arms Defense Journal had changed a lot as well. It appeared as after they let go their editor, the magazine had changed. It was not the same. It didn't cater to the gun savvy person as much. It became more and more of a typical gun magazine, like you would see at Guns and Ammo or something like that. Something that it was just a typical gun rag. It lost its spark as the highly technical magazines because of the new management. The management had really changed, and a lot of the ideas of what the magazine were supposed to be had changed as well. So it worked out well because after that door closed, the door opened up with Shooting Illustrated. I have written several articles for American Rifleman, and right now I'm doing quite a bit of writing for Shooting Illustrated. However, I decided that doing the written stuff is great and all, but it's extremely difficult because with many of the magazines, you're now competing with a lot of other authors because of all the ones who lost their jobs when Harris Publication shut down, and also the politics in the gun magazines has gotten pretty difficult as well. Getting approvals for what guns to be able to write up. There's no gun magazines out there anymore that really will just write about what you want. It's more about who's advertising and whatnot. So my wife had actually tried to get me to do a YouTube channel for quite some time. So she's always right. So I actually we tried it and didn't know how it was going to go, and I was really surprised to see very quickly how well it went. And the YouTube channel, it took some time for us to figure out where we were going to fit in. Because quite frankly, I'm not an entertainer. I have no personality. I'm all about facts. I like to talk about this is the gun, this is what it is mechanically, this is where it came from, these are the good features on it, these are the bad features on it. I'm not going to be the guy that's going to go out there and shoot at pop cans and gongs, and I'm not going to put these guns through absurd torture tests that are totally unrealistic. Throughout my time in the industry, I've been part of multiple weapons trials throughout the world, real world weapons trials. It really shows what a lot of these guys do on the internet is just so off the wall, it is unrealistic. So I will not waste my time or waste your time doing things that are not realistic. When I do a video, I do videos on guns that interest me. I look at what I want to see and what would interest me, and that's sort of how I choose. I'm starting to get a lot of feedback from you, from the viewers, that you want to see this, you want to see that, and that's freaking awesome because as long as I can get access to the guns, I will do whatever really interests you. Some of you guys have made comments, I want to see more than just a black rifle. You do see a lot of black rifle because that's my area of expertise. That's really the area where I spend a lot of my time. However, over the years, I've gotten vast experience with all these weapons platforms. So we're starting to see some more. I got some stuff out in the SCARs coming up pretty soon. I just did the Beretta ARX 100. I have several things on order right now. One of the challenges is with being a startup on a YouTube channel. A lot of manufacturers don't take you seriously until you've got 10,000 or 20,000 subscribers. I've been fortunate in some of the companies such as SIG and H&K and so forth, companies that I work very closely with as a writer for these published magazines, have continued to support me with the YouTube channel. So I'm able to get guns from them to bring them to you. As of this date, we're up about 1,750 or so viewers, and for 4 months of really working at this, we're really happy with that. As time goes on, you're just going to see more and more, and you're going to see more of the same type, more of me bringing you various types of weapons and giving you the detail. I'm very much a historian, as well, as you saw from the M16 video. The M16 video was really a passion of mine because I spent my life doing the research on that. While I was working at Colt, when that clock would strike 5 and I was done working, I would work my way over into the archives. And throughout those 3 years of a lot of nights not having anything to do at night because I was by myself, I had the opportunity to go over nearly every engineering change order that the M16 AR-15 went through since 1962 or 1963 when Colt got it. The records of Colt are very poor going back then, but the records of all the engineering change orders is there and is complete. So I know when and I know why every single change that was made to this weapon system since the original Model 01 when Colt got it from Armalite. So I had spent a lot of time interviewing Vietnam veterans and looking at it from a technical standpoint. I was actually interviewed on a television show probably around 2004. It was a British film crew. It was called the Greatest Military Clashes. I'm absolutely ashamed for being on it. I had spent a day with that crew, giving them the real story of what happened to the White Rifles in Vietnam. And after that, they chose to go listen to some not so savvy veterans who ended up giving them complete BS stories. They made up some malfunctioning scenarios, and it ended up being a flop. It was quite embarrassing. That was sort of a shame to be part of that because it was not the truth. It wasn't what happened. I actually confronted the producer on that, and he just gave me a lot of negative comments, maybe being an opinionated American and so forth. So that didn't go very well. But there's so much misinformation of the rifle and what happened in Vietnam and where the responsibility lied, which is why I made that hour-long documentary. Some of the comments of some things were left out. Well, this was an hour. For me to be able to keep somebody's attention for an hour is a great stretch. We could have gone into a lot of the smaller changes. This could turn this into a 2-hour video, and people just wouldn't have wanted to watch it. So I went over all the major issues. The rifles that I had obviously were not actual M16s. They were not the full auto. They were not the U.S. government marked. They were rifles that I had to build, that were as close as possible to what those original rifles were, using original components. The M9 was a very similar issue as well. I'd followed the M9 since 1985. In fact, I trained on that in the Army. We were one of the first units to actually be able to get those at Fort Benning to train on them. And right there, you're talking to the instructors who just switched over to the M9s. They're saying how much better that the troops were qualifying with it compared to the 1911s. So my experience of that goes from being right in the middle of it. I've been to the Beretta factory on several occasions, many conversations with engineering departments about slide failures and about all that kind of stuff and research. Research was all firsthand. It wasn't so-and-so knew from so-and-so knew from so-and-so who knew so-and-so at the gun club. It was direct firsthand. My training as being a firearm examiner, I've been to armor schools for probably 15, 20 different companies in my time. Also schools put on by ATF and FBI, forensics classes. I have visited probably 20, 30 firearms ammunition manufacturers to gain experience on how weapons are manufactured and whatnot. I used to give the forensic tours over at Colt too, where you get firearm examiners that would come in. I would actually take them through and show them, specific parts of the operations of manufacturing that were interesting to them, that showed, they gave the marks that they would be identifying. So that leads us up to, today. So that's a little bit of my background. Again, this has been my whole life's passion. This is what I've done my entire life. The M16 has been a science for me, going through its evolution, its development, its iterations. And then having the honor of meeting Stoner. I actually had met Stoner in 1995 at SHOT Show. In fact, I bought my SR25 from him. He didn't actually sell to me. I talked to him. I says I want one, and he took me over to Dave Lutz, and Dave Lutz took the order. But I bought that rifle because it was Gene Stoner, and I just was able to shake his hand. It was the greatest thing. I didn't realize how incredible of a rifle it was until the plane ride home when I read about it. I've had the privilege of meeting Kalashnikov on a couple occasions, Mr. Uzil Gal, Gaston Glock. I've had the opportunity to have a lot of really interesting conversations with the people who were involved, especially with this weapon system. Jim Sullivan, for instance. I've even done legal counsel for, this is legal counsel for Colt Defense for several years ago when they were doing some lawsuits against H&K and Bushmaster. And I was working at Colt right at the time when all this controversy went on with the HK416 and the best weapon and you can't have it in the M4 controversy, which we'll talk about that in a future video. It's a rather unique perspective being right there in the middle of it and what actually went on. But please keep sending comments in of things that interest you, firearms that interest you, ammunition that interest you. As long as I can get access to the equipment, I'd be happy to take any requests that you guys have. I do appreciate all the very positive comments. I'm glad you guys are enjoying my videos and my work, and I'm glad you're learning from it. And I plan on keeping that up. As we said earlier, videos are going to be slightly different for the next few weeks or so, just because the back brace here, the back's got to heal before I can actually do some shooting. But that's not going to stop the videos from coming. Again, we can do several videos that don't require the actual shooting themselves, some of the historical ones. So you can count on those. There's a few products out there that I'm extremely passionate about. The ones that I do believe are excellent products that are very, very useful. And I'd like to share some of the benefits of these with you guys. And also, I've worked with a couple of the companies to get you guys discounts. The first one is Manta. Manta manufactures the rail protectors as well as the grip protectors. There's a whole series of different types of products that Manta offers. These are, without a doubt, the best rail protectors in the industry, because they're not just rail protectors, they actually protect your hands from heat. You can't even burn these things with fire. I've tried burning them with a cigarette lighter. You can't even burn the stuff. So if you were to go onto Manta's website, and you wanted to purchase anything, you select what you like and you use the code SAS20 and you will save 20% on any products that Manta has. So that's a really good deal. These are awesome products. I can't recommend them more highly. They also make a wonderful suppressor sleeve for any of you guys out there who are SWAT guys who use suppressors. I'm sure a lot of you guys who have used suppressors have burned pants and everything over the years. By just putting the muzzle on your pants by accident. The suppressor sleeve will actually prevent that. It's another excellent product that has Manta. Another one also is G96. G96 makes the legendary G96 gun treatment. This stuff here I have used my entire life. Every single firearm I have it gets sprayed with it. Even being here in Southeast Texas with all the humidity, keep the guns sprayed down with this, and I don't have any issues with rust whatsoever. Also, they make the U.S. Military Clp, which I find is the best CLP in the industry. It's a fully synthetic CLP, referred to it as the Mobile One of gun oils. It is an excellent product. Also, the silicone gun and reel cloths. Pretty much any time that one of my guns is handled by anybody, I wipe them down with this to keep any rust. Excellent products. If you were to go on G96's webpage and purchase, you type in SAS10 for the product code, and you will save 10% on any G96 product. We are also working on right now Otis technology, and I'm very confident that very soon we're going to be able to offer you a product code for that, where it's going to save you some good money on purchasing kits directly from Otis. So as soon as we get that finalized, we'll let you know. But again, some of these companies that I really feel strongly with that I will endorse, because I do believe in them. I use them every day. Manta rails, you'll see on if my rifle's got a 1913 rail on it, you will see Manta rail covers. When I go out to the range, I'm using this oil. When my guns are done being cleaned, they're all sprayed with this. And this is the rag I use. So I'll tell you guys the exact equipment that I use. Is it the best equipment? In my opinion, yes. But is there stuff out there that's just as good? I'm sure there is. People use whatever you like. I'm just giving you the recommendations from my experience and what I like. So please take advantage of those product codes and get some products. I do thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this, please click like and please subscribe. Thank you.